On the clock. I think we went a little over last time.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and I want to welcome you back. Remember, our show is here to highlight veterans and their experiences and their stories and let them share those with you, our audience, to include veteran service providers. So we're happy to be here with you this evening. Before we get started, I do want to take just a moment again, as I do each show, and send a word out to thanks to our wonderful sponsors, Quest Jewelers of Merrifield, Virginia. And I tell you guys every week, and every show, and I'll continue to tell you, you need to call Pete and Wantain, the owners of the store. Give them a call at that 877 number you see on the screen. Tell them that you watched the show and I sent you. Talk to Pete and he will hook you up, and he'll also give you a discount. So I encourage you to do so. Got some wonderful stuff in there, some beautiful jewelry. And if you're looking for something in particular, they will help you get it. So again, encourage you to look them up. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business here in Fairfax, Virginia. CK Park and his crew, and the other thing about CK Park is he's got a large crew of veterans on that staff, which is kind of pertinent to what we're going to talk about with our guest tonight. We'll get into that, but CK and his crew will help you with whatever your business needs may be, whether it's training, IT, security, 360-degree assessments, program management, whatever it is, they can help you. So give them a call if you have a business in need of those services. All right, so let's get to tonight's guest. And some of you who have watched the show before, you may actually recognize Jeff Ribel, who is our retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, was just on a couple of months ago, and we talked with him, and he shared his story. And of course, Jeff, one of the things I thought was interesting was he was an Annapolis grad and came out as a Marine officer. So I always think that's interesting. But just wanted to remind you, it was a great show. We had great discussion, and Jeff approached me about coming back, and he wanted to share information tonight about transition, service information for you veterans out there, whether you're still on active duty or you're already making that change. Transition experience and some of the things that you can expect and some of the resources that are available. So when he offered that up, of course, I snatched at the opportunity. So Jeff, thank you for coming back on, and we're so glad to have you come and talk about some of this.
Excellent. Great to be on. Thanks for having me back. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Hopefully other veterans and families can benefit from my personal experience. I guess a couple of opening comments. I want to say it was the beginning of February. I won't touch on a lot of what I discussed in that show. That was more personally focused, but a couple of things I'd love to reiterate very quickly. One is that, if COVID has taught us anything, is to take care of yourself and love the people in your life. And everybody needs a social safety net of family and friends to support you throughout life's journey, especially veterans who have been through some interesting and sometimes tough times. So if you don't any longer have people in your life who can relate to you and be your battle buddy, then please do find other support. Really, I'm a proponent of all the veterans out there taking care of themselves so they can be a lighthouse in the storm that somebody else may need. So with that, today I'm kind of looking forward to sharing my personal experience and a few tips on transitioning from active duty, in my case, into the reserves, and simultaneously into an industry job.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind, Jeff, I just want to kind of comment on what you just said about veterans, making sure you find someone. And I know that we have put the number up a number of times here on the show. It's on our veterans resource site on the Going Solo Media, my webpage on the network. Yep. Oh, there it is. Thank you, CC. She's right on the ball with it. And we put this up, and based on what Jeff was just talking about, I just want to reiterate that if you're out there and you need help, don't hesitate. Find someone. If you don't have anyone, there's a number you can text to, and they'll be glad to talk with you. So please make sure you do that. On a personal note too, I have been under the care of a clinical psychologist for the past almost 3 years for my PTSD, and Jeff, you're right. Everybody needs that resource. And I felt so blessed to be able to now start to wean myself off those sessions like I was in all the time. And she's now cut me loose on my own. Scary as that might sound, but she still checks in with me every month via email, asking me if I need anything. But it's such a good feeling. And you're right. The veterans out there, they need to have that opportunity to get the help that they need. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, in my case, it's been my wife and also my son. And so I'd like to thank them for bearing with, being on the ride for our journey. And my wife and I have been together over 35 years. We just celebrated 31 years of marriage. So she stuck with me the whole way and been a key person in my support network.
Yeah.
I talked briefly about my son on the last show, and interestingly enough, he's actually writing about psilocybin, which is basically the healing abilities of mushrooms for things like depression, whether it's related to terminal patients who have cancer or some other terminal disease, or in a lot of cases, a lot of studies are looking at that for PTSD and treating very severe cases where it boils over into depression and things like that. So he's deep in the throes of that. It's been very interesting to hear him talk about what he's finding out. And in fact, he lives out in Denver and came into DC recently to go up to Bethesda to one of the preeminent physicians who is studying psilocybin and its impact for things like that. So it was good to see him, but thought that was very interesting tie to what we just talked about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was not aware of that. I never heard of that before. That is interesting.
So in the ad for the show, you had a couple of pictures. I definitely want to talk about that for about 2 minutes.
Okay.
One of them is a picture of me and a Navy friend, both in uniform, standing in front of the USS Wasp. So I was deployed on Wasp 94 through 96, and my buddy Rich Lofgren in that picture is now a Rear Admiral Select in the Navy Reserve. This is probably about 1995. So I was about 4 years into the military, and was a young captain who was lead Marines on board a Navy ship for 2 years, Marine Comm Detachment. So that was a lot of fun, but also a lot of deployed time. That was, on one hand, very professionally rewarding and exciting, but on the other hand, showed me what it was like to be away from family and away from that support network, that you're closest to in the nuclear family. So the other picture is my wife and son when I pinned on major in the Marine Corps, paid for my lobotomy. If you're military, you know what I mean there. That was in about 2000, and just one of those memorable times where I was actually in a shore billet where I could be home a little bit more and celebrate times like that. So I gave a lot of background on the last show. I'll probably focus here on my transition in industry. In my case, I was 9 years active duty. I got to be the late 90s, and I started looking at how much time I was spending away from my family and what was going on in the world, and thought that it was becoming more important for me now that we had a son to grow roots and figure out, how was I going to make a transition. And so I couldn't bear to leave the Marine Corps outright. I decided to go into the reserves. And so right about the turn of the century there, I transitioned in the reserves and spent another 14 years after that being a reservist, largely in individual mobilization augmentee billets, which basically means I'm primarily a staffer, but if a staffer gets yanked out of, headquarters Marine Corps or the Marine Corps Cyber Operations Group, or whoever I was connected to by unit, then I would fill in for them with my enterprise IT skills and help keep IT stuff humming for the Marine Corps.
So I just want to ask you something very quickly. In the Army, when we move out of line positions and get into staff positions, for instance, when I left my first sergeant position, my last 18 months in the Army, I moved to a brigade staff where I was the S3 staff NCO.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys get any kind of cute nicknames for us? Once we moved into those positions, they called us PowerPoint Rangers because we were constantly doing presentations and paperwork.
Yes.
So I don't know if you guys had something similar in the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. We also get PowerPoint Ranger badges.
Yeah.
We can't wear them on our uniforms, but that's true for everybody. You just can't get away from it.
Yeah, I figured that was the case.
Yep. It's kind of one of those staff things, isn't it?
Yes.
Watching my language, the other acronym of note for that kind of a billet is REMF, REMF.
Yeah.
And the first half is rear echelon.
Yep.
And I won't say the second half.
Yep. You are correct. I remember
Google
that as well.
You can use your favorite search engine to figure that one out if you don't know it already. But those billets were good for understanding how operations works and how it ties to intelligence and how the military operates, and that's a lot of good experience that you can take in an industry.
Yeah.
So I actually spent a lot more time being not a lot more, but I spent more time being operational in supposed shore billets, non-fleet Marine Corps fleet Marine Force billets than I did in the the actual fleet Marine Force. So those were professionally enlightening as well, and very much from an information technology and professional skills standpoint helped me be in a great position to transition. Not everybody has that benefit. We have infantry, tanks, logistics, administration, but everybody will be amazed. Even if you're in the thick of it and you just don't see it, you'd be surprised how much the skills that you learn in the military, even if you don't think about it or realize it on a day-to-day basis, how much those migrate to industry and how valuable it is for industry, of just about any type, to have people with military experience who have very unique life experiences, a lot of exposure to leadership, good and bad, that you learn from both, and personal capability that builds up over time, and personal experience that applies to what you may choose to do in any kind of industry. So don't sell yourself short. Definitely take stock of what you've done in the military and understand that it transitions a great deal more than you think it does into industry.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure you'll touch on this, but I think where I saw it too, trying to help some younger soldiers before I retired, is a lot of them have trouble expressing those qualities, especially when it comes to putting it on a resume. And I found that
Yes,
for a lot of enlisted soldiers, that was one of the biggest struggles they had was, trying to fix a resume and then be able to transfer some of those qualities over to where it made sense. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess on that note, you definitely want to you definitely want to get some help. If you're going into commercial industry where you're going to be interviewing for a job, um, you want to learn how to interview. What people are looking for in an interview, but you want to balance that with being your authentic self.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing that may very well get you in the door for an interview is going to be that resume. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit easier these days with tools like LinkedIn, where a lot of people are on there before they leave the military. Where you can sort of use that to generate your resume over time and build it up. But the real trick of the trade there is working with somebody who reads resumes for a living to figure out, how do I tell somebody what my personal impact was in my role as a tanker, or as in my case, a company commander, or whatever it is you're doing. Even uh, mortarmen and um, you know logisticians and motor T
Mm-hmm.
people all learn skills that are transferable to uh, a lot of parts of industry that you may not think about. So put some thought into that, put together a good resume that will catch somebody's eye. You know, you want it to be compliant with what other resumes look like, but you want to highlight the impact that you personally make or can make on a business based on your personal experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right because I had soldiers coming to me because I had a master's in HR. So I had a lot of soldiers coming to me asking for help with, tips and resume and it worked out okay. But you're right. I think one of the more difficult things that they struggled with was being able to describe specific requirements they had and how it could relate to the job they could do. Because so many places want specific accomplishments, but you got to be able to relate those to how you think it would fit into the job, or at least to
That's
a
right.
certain extent. Yeah. So I saw that struggle quite a bit.
Yeah. So I'm in effectively the aerospace and defense industry, federal government contracting. And so for us, um, a lot of resumes look the same. And so you want to do a good job of highlighting what you bring with you to the business that they may not get from somebody who's not military, or somebody who doesn't have your personal experience or view of the world. So you need to find ways to get that across that stand out, make you stand out from a crowd of. I mean, there's so many jobs out there and so many people applying for them. I'll give you an example. I just switched jobs in January, and I probably applied for several dozen jobs.
Mm.
Let's call it 30, and I ended up, went through the process, had half a dozen, interviews with a half a dozen of those different companies, and chose Leidos, the one I'm at now. So you need to figure out, how to create a compelling resume and how to be your authentic self, when you get that interview. Um, have a funny story about that for later, but just be your authentic self and do your homework going into an interview. Understand what the company's about. Understand the job that you're applying for and what you can bring to it, and make sure you talk about that in a casual way with an interviewer. It's not a series. Interviews aren't a series of questions that you should be intimidated about. It's turn it into uh, a two-way discussion where They may be the one asking the questions, but you're the one framing how you answer those questions and leaving them with information that you want them to take away to consider for hiring you permanently. So do your homework and understand what that job role is and how you can, why you will do that really well.
Yeah, I think when you bring up that point, one thing that comes to mind very quickly for me was my last tour in Europe. My first tour in Europe, I was selected to go to the Sergeant Morales Board, which is one of the Army NCO's elite leadership associations. And I had to go through 4 boards to get all the way to the Corps Board. And they're the ones, group of command sergeant majors are the ones who sit on that board. And you walk in there and they're firing stuff at you. And you're right. I had to learn to kind of take control of that situation and fire right back to where you feel confident. So, yeah, I think that's a very good point. We're going to take a quick break here and hear from our sponsors very quickly. And when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Jeff and hear what else he wants to share with us. So we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everyone. And you've been listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And our guest tonight has been retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Ribel. I almost got my tongue in front of my eye. Teeth couldn't see what I was saying. And we've been talking tonight about making that transition and tips for moving into the private sector from the military. So, Jeff, let's continue on. I think you had some industry tips and organizations that you were going to talk about as well, didn't you?
I do. In fact, a good segue would probably be your sponsor there, Nationwide IT Services.
Yeah.
Looks like a fun company. That's kind of the type of company I went to when I left active duty and went in the reserves. It was a smallish, about 100 employees in my case. and ultimately they ended up getting bought by a much larger company. And that's kind of how I grew up in industry, and ended up running SRA International's Navy, Marine Corps, and Defense Agencies business. So at its peak, we were doing about $110 million a year in revenue in those accounts, and I was responsible for about 450 people, and responsible for growing my part of our business. And so that's ultimately what I do today. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, but it brings me to the point that you really want to do your homework before, as you're getting out. Figure out what resources you have available to you, whether it's military provided, whether it's nonprofits that are there and their sole purpose is to help transitioning veterans, or it's industry resources, whether it's the company that you're going to or trying to go to, or a lot of companies like Leidos, like my company, is deeply involved in several military veteran support type initiatives that I'll talk about towards the end here. So definitely do your homework and understand what resources you can tap into. On the military side, I'm sure they still have transition assistance program where they put you through maybe 2 days of courses that teach you a little bit about options in industry and what's a resume and what's an interview. And yes, you have to go buy wardrobe that is not your military uniform, depending what kind of a job you're going to go into. So account for that cost and things like that. It might sound basic, but it's a life change that you have to experience.
Yeah.
So on the there's another program, military program called Skill Bridge. I won't go into great detail on it, but 2 of my companies I've been at have participated in that. I think that's relatively new, within the last decade, where the military will actually pay for people who get selected to go work in industry while they're, before they leave active duty, so they can get some experience under their belt and work with that industry and figure out, is this what I want to do? And very often, a lot of those Skill Bridge jobs transition right into a paid role at that company. So great opportunities out there on the military side. On the nonprofit side, one of the organizations that Leidos supports is the American Corporate Partners. And basically what they do is set up mentorships for veterans, and they basically pair you up with somebody in the industry. So you can get on their website. Paul, we can put all of these in the show notes so that everybody has access to these, right?
Yeah. In fact, if you don't mind, after the show is over, if you want to send me those, I will ask our studio head. I'll ask Cece to add them to my resource page.
Absolutely.
On the website for my show, where a lot of these resources go. So yeah, if you'll do that, we'll definitely put them up.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be great. So American Corporate Partners, last year in 2022, they basically paired up almost 4,000 veterans and spouses in the mentoring program with somebody in industry who helped them understand what that industry is about, perhaps help them get a job, help them answer any questions about transitioning. It's a really great program. The website is acp-usa.org. We'll get it in the show notes. Leidos does a lot of things to support veterans. I'm actually wearing my flashing up on the screen here, Leidos Military Alliance Group t-shirt.
There you
go. This is an employee resource group. So Leidos has 45,000 employees around the world, very large company. And we have about 8,500 veterans in the company. So about 20% of us are vets. And we mutually support each other. That's what the MAG is set up for, to be basically an existing network at our company, that when a new person rolls into the company, you already have an existing network that's there if you want to tap into it.
Yeah.
If you choose to engage, you don't have to, but it's there for you. And if an employee resource group like that doesn't exist, and you're at a large company, think about starting one and running it for them. So
yeah, I think that can be important, because I remember when I moved into my first civilian job after spending 21 years in the Army, it took a little adjustment, not necessarily the work, but the atmosphere and everything else. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Let's talk about that adjustment for a minute. Let me get away from Leidos and what they do and talk about that transition. My tip number one for everybody would be, do something you're passionate about if you can. Find something you're really passionate about and turn it into a job, or find a job that involves that. And if you can't do that, then my best advice for you would be to don't lose your sense of self. And while you're not losing your sense of self, make sure you find something that gives you a higher purpose than yourself. So in the military, everybody's attuned to, this is what the military does, and I'm doing that. And day to day, generally somebody's giving me guidance and I'm going and doing it. And it can be fun. It can be rewarding. It can be exhausting. It can be taxing. It can be depressing. It's the same way in industry. So if you have a choice, do something you're passionate about. And if that job that you're moving into is not something you're passionate about, then find what you are and make it your side hustle. Tip my hat to the entrepreneurs out there who are in a position to start up their own business, or focus on the thing that they're passionate about. Some people get a regular job and do that as a side hustle until it turns into something large enough to sustain you and your family. Yeah. That's a great approach. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody's built for it. People have a different mentalities coming out of the military and working through that transition. In my case, to tell the funny story I referenced earlier, the first interview I had was with the small company that I ended up working for, and really nice people. I showed up, I was in my suit. I probably hadn't worn a suit in a decade. And show up to the interview, and I talked to a couple people, and I thought it went pretty well. They ended up giving me an offer, and I accepted the offer over a couple of others and ended up working there. And probably about 5 years later, my boss, the CEO of the company, said to me, over a beer, of course, when you interviewed with us, when you were transitioning out of the military, you were very serious. You were, we could tell that, you were a nice person and a good person, and we want that in people, but we also like to have fun at work, and you were just very serious. And so we weren't sure that you were going to fit into the company culture of having fun every day and, enjoying waking up in the morning to go to work. And it wasn't too long, before they got to know me, and they knew I was a cultural fit. I ultimately stayed in that job for 16 years.
Yeah.
But, that's what I was talking about earlier, about be your authentic self. Chill out. You don't have rank on your collar anymore. Nobody else owes you anything. You have to go into an interview and leave people with an understanding of what you're about and why you fit there and why you would do well in that job function. And you're probably competing against dozens of others in this market. So think about that as you're preparing for that process.
Yeah.
The other, to carry that sense of self thing a step further, I won't talk too much about this because it gets somewhat spiritual, but a good open question to ask yourself as you're ruminating on your military experience and figuring out what you want to do for a living, so to speak, and finding something that gives you a higher purpose than yourself. Ask yourself if you know why you're on this earth. If
Mm.
you don't have a purpose in life, figure out how to find your purpose in life and tie that to the thing you're passionate about, or make your passion that purpose if you haven't already. And network and find people who can help you, make that passion a reality and help you serve your purpose in life. So that's kind of high level, 30,000 foot thinking, as we say in the military, but
Yeah.
figure that out. And if you don't know it, go, use your jobs coming out right out of the military to figure out if you like doing what you're going to do. If you don't like it, go do something else, with fair consideration for the impact on your family, obviously, and yourself and your financial well-being. But go explore and see what you like and what you don't like, and people will help you with that. Just ask.
Mm.
Talk. If you know what you want to do, go find somebody who's good at it and ask if you can pick their brain once a month,
Yeah.
or every 2 weeks, and have coffee with them. Find a mentor. They will help you a great deal to frame what you're thinking and guide you down a path that gets you to where you want to go. But you have to figure out, what that end state is, what you want to be and do. I keep saying life's a journey, but don't let it pull you through life. You create your own path, blaze your own trail, and be proactive in how things turn out for yourself.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because here I am. Oh, I'll be 64 this year, and I'm getting ready to retire for the second time for good. And I still have my wife asking me what my purpose is.
There you go. That's right.
So, I
Yeah,
guess I found it through my work life, but now I got my wife asking me what my purpose is all the time. So I got to
that's
figure
right.
that one out next.
That's a good point. You can it's easy to get lost in the sauce of life.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure I can 100% answer that question right now, but I can tell you that a good part of it is the reason I'm on this podcast. So
Yeah.
there's that. But yeah, so to close out with a couple of things with what Leidos offers employees. Anytime you go to a big company, they have all sorts of resources like this. I talked about the Military Alliance Group. I talked about their support of American Corporate Partners, which is actually a nonprofit organization. Leidos has something called Operation MVP, and the Military Veteran Program is a nationwide, really global hiring program where Leidos is committed to hiring 15,000 vets or military spouses
Hmm.
by 2030.
Wow.
So the demand signal is there for anybody looking for a job. And I got to tell you, our company does everything. We do information technology stuff. We do logistics stuff. Leidos runs the largest logistics supply chain, which happens to be to the Antarctic in the world.
Wow.
Um, we support the Defense Logistics Agency. I'm in the Intel group, specifically in the Homeland Security Solutions part of Leidos. So I deal with, my customer base is Department of Homeland Security and Federal Bureau of Investigation. And we have people supporting the entire federal government, and we do some commercial things too. And there are internal functions inside the company that need good military veterans to work. So please check out Leidos's website. I'll put that link in the show notes, or give it to Paul to put in there. We support the USO, American Veterans Center, Reese Across America, Paralyzed Veterans of America, Special Operations Warrior Foundation, Fisher House, so many causes that the Military Alliance Group gets involved with. And, we're all there to support each other inside the company. And as a, military veteran facing part of the company that's run by ourselves to help other vets get sucked into our vortex in a good way. So, great stuff. The company, they call it upskilling. So, always take wherever you go especially in larger companies, but also small companies, especially in government contracting or commercial companies, take advantage of tuition reimbursement to get more educated, to learn a new skill, to get better at what you do. Take advantage of training programs. Leidos pays for upskilling, meaning, training to be better in something you have that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
In our case, those programs are tied to cloud computing, artificial intelligence and machine learning, software development, cybersecurity, digital engineering, meaning system engineering that is kind of designed to help the federal government specifically, and things like that. But all sorts of resources inside industry and through nonprofits that can help you get into a role that you're looking to get to.
Yeah, it sounds like, Jeff, you listed quite a few, and like I said, I would definitely appreciate it if you could pass me some of those via email, and I will ask CC to put them on my reference on my resource page. You've provided some good information here and some good possible sources for the veterans to consider. So I just want to ask you one more thing. A little different. Last time you were on the show, I asked you if you had one message just to share with the veterans that you like to share. This time I'll just ask you, is there any one particular thing involving transition that you think is most important?
Sure. Well, I talked a lot tonight. I would have talked more if you let me, but I would say that transitioning veterans should think about their life's purpose and what they're passionate about, and how their skills translate into industry, and what they want to do for a living. So attach yourself to that thing that's bigger than you, and go do it. Every veteran knows how to execute.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward advice, I think. Well, Jeff, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you coming back on and sharing this information with us. And again, I'll be more than happy to share that information on my resource page if you send it. And, later on in the future, if you guys are doing something great over there where you're at, I'd love to have you come back on later on and share some more of your programs at your company and what they're doing and how the veterans might be able to use those. Maybe we could focus on that. Might be a good bit of information. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come back on, and it was great seeing you again.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it, and look forward to the future. Hopefully we can help some veterans, and if anybody wants to drill down deeper than what I talked about today, look me up on LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me there, and I can help you out.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that offer too to the audience. So, Jeff, thank you very much, and I'm sure maybe I'll be talking with you again soon.
Great. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. And for those of you watching the program tonight, I wanted to share a piece of information with you. You see on the bottom of your screen, the website to NARA eVet Rex. It's an online submission. I'm always hearing guys saying, man, I need to find a copy of my DD-214. There's the website right there, vetrexarchives.gov. You can go on there. It's from the National Archives. In fact, I wanted to let you know I tested it out myself, and they mailed me a DD-214 to my home. Once you get on there, they're going to ask you information that only you know to verify who you are, of course. So you need to be prepared to answer some questions about yourself, hopefully that you can answer. But they're an excellent resource for those of you that are looking for a copy of your DD-214. Remember, your family members, other people in your family are going to need those, if and when something does happen to you, you're going to need those documents. So make sure you take care of that. And we want to thank you for joining us tonight, and thank Jeff again. Thank our audience for tuning in. And we want to remind you, go to goingsolomedia.com, and you will find the Veterans Corner and my webpage for the show, where we will post all the information for you. So thank you, veterans. We want to thank you for your service, and we hope to see you again on our next show.